Good evening. How's everyone? So, are we ready to start? Yeah? Okay, so I was just with Bob back there, and we were trying to figure out how long we've known each other. It seems at least 27, 30 years now.
Yeah, I think so. We're trying to remember.
Yeah.
I think many lives.
I was referring to this this one. We definitely upgraded the illusion for this one, right?
Yes.
This is the upgrade of the illusion.
Yes.
So, anyway, today we are very proud to launch this book, Man of Peace, the illustrated life story of the Dalai Lama. Bob is here with his two co-authors.
Yes, William Myers is there, and Michael Burbank is back there. There they are.
Please stand up. Thank you, gentlemen. Of course, we are here thanks to the graciousness of Paulette Cole. A sacred space. And tonight, not only is Rita here, but my daughter Malika and two of my grandkids are here as well. So,
Very good.
Bob, it's not very frequently that we have the honor of having probably the most eloquent, articulate, knowledgeable person on our planet, or as far as Buddhology is concerned.
Oh yeah, that I'm proud of.
Yeah. So let's start a little bit about your life, then this book, and then I think it's only reasonable we should get some knowledge also about the basic principles of Buddhology.
Okay.
So let's start with the beginning. How did you meet His Holiness first?
Right.
And how did all come about?
It's in there. It's on the page.
Yes.
So I came with the old Mongolian geisha in 1964, after I'd been studying Tibetan Buddhism for a few years already in, of all places, New Jersey. I went to India as a fakir, a penniless pilgrim, with my one eye and the whole thing in 1961-62. And then my father passed away here in New York, and I came back, and during the time I was here for the funeral, I met a Mongolian in New Jersey, only like 2 hours by bus from the Port Authority terminal. And then he introduced me to Buddhism, really his practice of it. I'd read about it, and I'd gone to India to find it. And then after a year and a half, he got tired of me bugging him to make me a monk, because he said, "You're living like a monk, that's good, but in the long run, you're not your destiny to be a monk."
This was before Nena or after Nena?
Yeah, this was before Nena.
Nena is there too.
Nena is there. And there's Nena. And actually, she's the co-author. I must say. I'm the co-author of what she does. Anyway, so I was leaving the world and all this, and then in New Jersey. So he said, "Yes, you're like that now, and that's good for study, but you're not going to be a monk in the longer run. So don't rush to be a formal monk, because monk is for life." And I said, "Yes, I'm for life. I know where I'm going." So then finally he took me, said, "Well, maybe Dalai Lama will make you a monk. So I'll take you, and he can take charge of your studies, take you to India with me," which he did. And then I met him in that scene there in Sarnath at a World Buddhist Fellowship Conference, where he was presenting Tibetan Buddhism to these Burmese, Sri Lankan, Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, all these people from all over the world. And they were all really, they're nervous about Tantra, and they wonder if it really is Buddhism or some weird Tibetan thing at that time, So they were making comments like, "Well, he's a monk, I guess. How can he be a monk and do that Tantra stuff?"
Big
and he was very wonderful. He charmed. They loved him, of course, even then. Although he was not at that time like the kind of knowledgeable powerhouse that he became. He was still learning, and as he was very open about it, as he always is. He's still learning even today. He says, And he's so funny. And so he made me a monk after a while. The old Lama who took me to see him said, don't make him a monk. He wants to be a monk, but he's a little crazy. You know, he's American. They're very intelligent, speaks Tibetan well, but he wants to be a monk. He's sincere, wants to be a monk, but don't make him a monk. As you know, the Americans are like that. And but so Dalai Lama took his time, but then we became such close friends, and I kept saying I wanted to be a monk, so he made me a monk. And then he was a little disappointed when I resigned, not too long after that, a year or two after that. And he remained disappointed. But then about 3 years later, or 4 years later, I saw him again as a graduate student with a wife and 2 children. And he was kind of nervous about it. And but then he looked at the youngest, the oldest one, the boy, who was just 3 years old at that time, leaped into his arms, knocked his glasses across the room like that. Everybody fell down laughing. And he loved the children, and he loved Nina. And he said, oh, you're lucky to have such a great person, and the 2 of you should take care of each other, and you should since you're not a monk, you should be a good husband. And squeezed our hands so hard that the ring that Nina was wearing, which was a dragon ring with some rubies in it, made a seal on her other finger, like a stamp.
So Bob, this book has 10 parts.
What? Yes.
This book has 10 parts,
yes,
right?
Yes, 10 parts and an epilogue.
Yeah. So, what's this book about? Why should anyone be interested in reading this? Why should anyone be interested in reading this?
Well, because our leadership today, mostly, unfortunately, the world leadership are men of war, and they are threatening us all with extinction, actually. And even the consumer industrialists are also making war on nature and the planet, the petroleum, the whole thing. So that there is a living man of peace. You know, we did have Buddha, Jesus, Krishna, many people. We had, then with more recent time, we had Thoreau, Tolstoy, Gandhi, and Martin Luther King are sort of the most ones that we remember. And then they all get shot, you know, or something goes wrong, and we get depressed, and we think the men of war have the charge, you know. But here's a man of peace who somehow is surviving. He has not yet reached the ears in the proper way of the leaders of China, who could change the terrible situation that still exists in Tibet. But on the other hand, you know, he has kind of gotten the world's heart to open about the Tibetan people, you could say. And so the vast mass of people want to see happiness on the roof of the world again. They want to hear Om Mani Padme Hum echoing from there. India desperately needs to have a free zone there, whether it's politically under Chinese sovereignty, as long as they don't mess with the rivers and the glaciers and the ecosystem, because all of India's rivers come from there, right? And if they are melting that glacier 3 times too many by putting 3 times too fast, by putting too much population which never had big cities on the roof of the world. And this creates a heat thing that then melts faster than global warming. And so this man inspires us that we can prevail peacefully. We can rebel against the war system, lovingly and forcefully, but not with hatred or anger or violence. He's an inspiration for that.
I've been going through the book, and first of all, it's a great way to learn about existence, life, Bob's relationship with his holiness in a comic book. So, I encourage everyone to read this. But I have a question. Except for the luminaries you mentioned. You mentioned a few.
Yes.
Buddha and Gandhi and Jesus. And,
yes.
The history of humanity is the history of violence, right?
Yeah, a duality about violence?
No, the history of humanity.
Oh, yes.
Is a history of violence.
Oh, yes.
So as a human species, are we peaceful or violent
by
nature?
I believe the Buddha's own biological karma theory says that we human beings are peaceful in nature, actually. And the history of violence is the way that militaristic societies teach the history. And they emphasize that side of it because they want to keep their defense budgets and their offense budgets going. But actually, if you look at history, it's like Gandhi's thing that he says, when one of his strikes failed, And they said, well, don't you get discouraged? It failed because he withdrew the strike because some police station was burned and some police were killed by a mob and so forth of his people. So they said, well, don't you get discouraged when violence always disrupts what you're doing? And he said, no, I don't. Because, yes, that was a terrible thing, and so we're going to stop, and so that people can think about how we didn't want that to happen. But millions of people, even hundreds of millions of people, didn't do that during this event. And I think about all the fabric of human civility and human love and families and parents caring for children and children caring for each other. And actually the history of the human species is cooperation. We are the dominant species on the planet because we have language, for example. The Buddhists say, like, the suffering of the animals who are less effective than the human animal, it comes about because they have the suffering of anonya bhakshana, one eating another. So they have no time to chat. They meet and gobble. They gobble each other up. And so they're either running away or they're after somebody. And so humans, we were hiding out, we were living in a cave. There was a tiger outside. We had to listen to our wives and start to try to behave ourselves and figure out something. And probably some wife said, well, look, dear, I make a little spit like this to cook some food when you go out and hunt. And it pierces through the flesh of this thing. Why don't you make a long one and go out and get after that tiger?
No, but Bob, I agree with everything you've said. But right now, with climate change, extinction of species, war, terrorism,
yes,
risking our own extinction,
yes,
I think violence has won out.
Well, that's the danger. The danger is that we give up and we despair and we decide, oh, our grandchildren are not going to have the fun we did, and great-grandchildren, and it's just too much of a wreck, and never mind. And actually, that is what the psychotic ideology of materialism is teaching people. And it teaches people not to care enough to really make the effort to make the change. What I feel is that situation that you described accurately is a situation where the human being is realizing, I think, en masse, it's realizing that the humanity is, that whereas being violent and self-defense and even preemptively offensive was survival enhancing throughout the last few thousand years, from now on, this is not survival enhancing. The opposite, being vulnerable, being open, dialoguing with your enemies, loving your enemies, that's the only thing that's survival enhancing at this time. Because nobody can win these wars. You cannot escalate. The wars will destroy everybody. And I guess also, there is another dimension here about this man in the book, in that he is, Alex created this beautiful cover for us, very kindly pro bono, where you see the Dalai Lama in transparent, and he's then back in his home, mandala there in Tibet, in Lhasa. But behind him, sort of to fuse with him, is Avalokita Ishvara. And Avalokita Ishvara is really, who is considered the incarnation of the compassion of all Buddhas, and presented himself as a bodhisattva, and reaching into the lives with his 1,000 arms and his 1,000 eyes to really know what people need out of compassion. And avalokitaing them, which means looking at them with loving care. So, and Ishvara means God, as you know. Maheshvara, is the creator for Indian monotheists. But here, this is Avalokita Ishvara, a God who cares. And I think he is a key figure in the history of Indian spirituality, of changing from the Vedic idea of kind of scary gods who you have to make sacrifices to, or they get mad at you and they're after you, and Indra gets stoned on Soma, and he stamps on your house and everything if you don't make the right ritual, and changing over to this bhakti, beautiful Indian bhakti idea that God loves you, that the power universe loves you. And so this story is of a man who is like an angel, but one who has taken you ordinary person in a way, and then yet has practiced something to become a very, very model, enlightened, kind, lovable, delightful person with a great sense of humor.
Bob, I'm going to be interrupting you a lot today.
Please do.
The reason is, yes. Bob is so knowledgeable that you ask him a question and then we can keep listening for a few days.
That's true.
Because he
That's
is
true.
knowledgeable. But I want to get the best out of you.
Okay.
So coming back to our theme of violence and peace, and if you look at religions across the world, they all talk about peace. They all talk about love. They all talk about compassion. They all talk about empathy, kindness.
Right.
And more or less as moral imperatives, right? And yet, when we practice these as moral imperatives, we fail miserably. So when we go to the real doctrine of the Buddha, it's not because it's a moral imperative, but it's actually a result of the delusion of the separate self, which doesn't exist, right?
Buddha and Hindu same.
So when the separate self is a hallucination, doesn't exist, then to have these attitudes, these divine qualities, love, compassion, is not a moral imperative, it's a kind of a natural expression of your being, right?
Right, absolutely.
So with that, is it good if we go on some of the Buddhology? He's the first person actually to have a degree in that from Harvard. Find the new
well, that was something we were talking about. I'm very proud that I'm the only person that I know, at least up to that time, and I don't think since, who has a degree. My PhD is in Buddhology. And the logi part means the study of, Buddha. And normal Buddhist studies in American academia is not like that, because in their view, Buddha couldn't have been enlightened because he didn't have a PhD from Harvard. And so they're enlightened because they do, you see. And then they're looking at why people think this funny man with an orange stain running around and not having his army like his father wanted him to, the Buddha, why he was behaving like that. And they can't imagine that there is a different consciousness, that it's really a higher consciousness. But that's the higher consciousness that we all need to have. But there is one encouraging thing that I encourage myself with. And that is, and it came to me when I wrote my first trade book called The Inner Revolution. And then I had the theory of the cool hero, the hero who is willing to sacrifice their life if necessary for peace and not to kill anybody else, rather than the one who can sacrifice their life in hatred and anger or angry battlefront. And someone said to me, well, where's the cool heroes? There's your Gandhi, if you Dalai Lama, maybe King. Where are the cool heroes? Where are they? So I was a little bit stumped in a sense, but you know what? Why? Because I was thinking of all famous male figures. And then I had a memory of a family row in my birth family. And all the men, the brothers, 3 boys, father, grandfather even, all ready to do each other in practically, in fury and anger. And who's in the middle? The grandmother and the mother. And they're like, oh no, dear, don't, you didn't mean that. Don't really say that. Oh no, don't push it. Oh, don't beat him up. Oh no, don't hit your father. Don't hit your brother. And then they get hit in the middle of these angry men. And they are the cool heroes that hold the glue of the family and the glue of the community together. That's what I'm saying. You can have some who are not like that. And that gives us hope. They are not an economy of war.
The last part of this book is all about the different taras.
All the taras taking care of the planet.
Taking care of the world. So
that's right.
Let me ask you.
Dalai Lama actually said he would probably be a woman in his next life. He said it in Italy. And then he said, and in that case, I'll be much more attractive. And if you leave some male chauvinist Tibetans were a little nervous about that.
What I'd like to do in the remaining time, though, is ask you questions and then specific answers. Huh?
Okay.
So, the 3 fundamentals. The separate self doesn't exist. The relative is impermanent. Nirvana is the ultimate reality. For a lay person, what does that mean?
Yes. The second noble truth that the Buddha first taught he gave these things that were called by Western translators the Four Noble Truths. But you can also translate satya, meaning just a fact. And actually it's a medical diagnosis rather than a big religious proclamation. It's a medical diagnosis. And the medical diagnosis is, the symptom is that a person who thinks they are separate, absolutely so, from everything else, they have a soul that's separate, they have a body that's separate, everyone else is different from them, the universe is different from them, that person is in a hopeless situation. Because except when things are sort of relatively okay, in any kind of stressed out situation, they are sort of up against insuperable odds. And there's time and space and sickness and old age and death and people disliking them and enemies. And I mean, it's just, you can't conquer if it's you versus the universe. We are all having a drama nowadays of a man who thinks it's him versus the universe. I mean, poor guy, really. You don't have to be very sympathetic. He's I won't go there.
He's doing the best he can to escape the
He's exemplifying the diagnosis. So the symptom is the unenlightened life will be frustrating because you'll never get everything you want out of a universe that is different from you, and your pleasure won't last, etc. It's not even rocket science. It's really simple. And the second one is a really deep thing about the reason for that is that feeling of separate self, as you said. It's the absolutizing of the inner self. Like, I am something absolutely separate. Me personally, I have this dog tag, this barcode in there that's my identity, and it never changes, and somehow I have to defend it from the whole universe, which is all different from it. And so that's the second one, the diagnosis. The third one is the prognosis. Luckily, the reality of everything is nirvana. Why the Dalai Lama, in the midst of all the stress that you see when you follow him and you get close to him and you live his life with him in this book, the illustrated book, the Dalai Lama keeps his cool and he keeps cheerful and he keeps happy and he doesn't get swept up in his misery about his people being abused and killed and genocide and ethnocide and culturecide and all the terrible things going on because of geopolitics and greed and so on. And he does resist it, and he speaks out about it, and he works hard to defend it, but he is happy, whatever happens. He's ready to, not kill. And this is because he sees that it all is ultimately nirvana. When you realize nirvana, the third one, the reality of the world is okay. This is very important for Western people, because we are conditioned to think that the reality, in our religious things before, that the reality of the world is really bad and we're naughty, we may probably go to hell because we're all a bit naughty, I think. Okay? This is going to speak for myself. So we have that fear thing in the Western culture about the sort of reality itself, and then this is palliated by materialism. Well, it's not hell, but it's just nothing. So it's all worth nothing, and you're worth nothing, unfortunately, is the bottom line of that, ultimately. And so those attitudes takes a lot for us to recondition ourselves to think, gee whiz, if I let all go of everything, if I let it all go downstream, I just open my heart and become vulnerable to everyone, it'll be horrible, but actually, no, it'll be great. If one does that, then it's like the dark night of the soul, John of the Cross. You give up fighting your way through it, and then you find something brings you up, and they call it, of course, God, or the will of God, or something. The Buddhists call it the clear light of the void, an infinite energy that you're already made of, that we already are. So the world actually is seen when you realize that nirvana. You see everyone also as in nirvana, and then your compassion can bear that they feel they're not in nirvana and they're fighting over the universe. And if you rushed up to them and gave them a big nirvana hug, they would think you were trying to wrestle them or something. They would be paranoid. So you can't actually just sort of blast them into nirvana, into knowing where they actually are. You have to open their minds and give them reasonings and get them to be critical about the way they're closed off and defensive, and get them how to teach them that. As the Dalai Lama said in this YouTube, I saw this YouTube, I'd never seen it, from some conference. Somehow click, and it was looking something in there. And in the YouTube, he says, the secret of saving the planet is warm-heartedness. Nobody, and they showed some slides, it was nicely made. And they said people advertise, defense budget, they advertise, this thing, that thing, medicine, pills, neuroscience. Nobody advertises warm-heartedness. But the key to everything is warm-heartedness, he kept saying. And then everybody was enjoying it at that conference on the stage with him. And then he made everybody laugh really badly. I don't think maybe I should sell it.
No, not yet. Okay, so let me comment on this.
So then fourth noble truth, so third noble truth. Third noble truth. I should finish. Third noble truth is nirvana, and the non-dual thing is this is nirvana. If we understood who we were, what we are objects of bliss, if we understood it. But we don't know, it's ignorance is not the bliss, ignorance brings the frustration. And it's the ignorance of our true state, which is a complete bubble of bliss in an ocean of bliss, bumping around with a bunch of bubbles of bliss, actually. And not chasing any of them or grabbing them, because the bliss is self-sufficient in each of us. But sharing, actually, with anybody who doesn't feel that. So that's the third noble truth. That's the prognosis. That's how hopeful our situation is as individuals. And just if they blow up the planet right now, in another life on another planet, Obi-Wan, the real Jedi, will make another one. And we'll jump on that, and then we'll start having negotiations and create a UN and make a mess. So not listen to our wives, and our lovers, and our partners, and our friends, and our daughters and children. So then the fourth noble truth is the therapy. It is ethical therapy, it is meditational therapy, and it is scientific therapy. Coming to a realistic view of the nature of causation of the world and how we can get negative state from negative causes, and we can understand freedom, bliss, nirvana from positive causes, and then we go to work on that therapy.
Okay, so taking all that,
yes.
I'd like to kind of summarize it.
Yes.
What Bob has been saying as fact, not as theory, but as fact.
Yeah.
Fact number one, the separate self does not exist. Fact number two, the world of space-time and causality is impermanent. Fact number three, nirvana is the real reality. So what I'd like to share with our audience today is that today one of the biggest movements in psychology is what people are talking about as flow. How many people have heard that word, flow?
Flow. Yeah.
Flow. So when you're in flow, these are what the features are. Number one, there's no sense of separate self. The separate self is gone. Number two, there's an experience of timelessness. Time is also gone. Number three, there's a sense of effortless spontaneity and joy, automatically. Number four, there is spontaneous creativity, love, compassion, joy, empathy, equanimity, not as moral imperatives, but as your natural state. Number five, or six, whatever, there's no resistance to what is in this moment, no anticipation of what is to happen in the next moment. It's just this moment as it is. Now, this experience that people are calling flow also has richness of sensory experience and clarity, and light of pure being.
Yes, sure.
So what people are now coming to as a description of flow as the highest state of being is in fact nirvana.
Well, I think it's a taste of it. Maybe.
It's a taste of it.
But nirvana means you're in permanent flow, effortlessly. And so much so that you could shape something. You could shape something for the benefit of another. That might be your spontaneous that would be your spontaneous creativity, because
which is the creativity of the universe.
Yeah, everything is beautiful. You see it as fine, and you see everyone else as fine, and therefore you're like you have the best possible placebo effect on people, because you see their potential or rightness. At the same time, you don't ignore that they don't feel that way.
Just by your state of being. Just by your state of being.
Yes, exactly. And the other great thing is that saying this sort of thing, even whatever we say, is not up to what the state actually is. It is inconceivable to our normal and dualistic concepts. So the Buddha doesn't give you a dogma or a theory or say, you have to believe that. He doesn't say that. It's just to say, well, realistically, you don't think it's nirvana. I realize that. So you have to critique in your own mind what you think, why you think it isn't nirvana, and et cetera, et cetera. You know, in other words, it's a learning and an understanding, schooling thing rather than a religious, you must believe this.
It's not a belief system. Belief, in fact, becomes a cover-up for insecurity. It's understanding reality as it is.
That's it. Right.
So, in that prescription of reality, can you share from your level of expertise the eightfold?
Well, I don't pretend to have really achieved that, unfortunately.
You do.
My
you don't have to pretend.
My state of flow has been said by some people, even children that's running over the mouth. So but sometimes it could be said like that. But yes, I can say that.
To talk about the eightfold path, you know, there are a lot of novices here.
Yes. Well, the first branch of the eightfold path is, by the way, not meditation. Because meditation is so powerful, because our minds are so powerful, that if you meditate based on your fundamental misknowledge, your misunderstanding of your own state, thinking that you're this separate being, your meditation will tend to emphasize that separateness, and it will tend to get you to withdraw from interconnectedness, and therefore the opposite of flow, you'll tend to get more and more psychotic, actually, and stuck in a world by yourself, and find the outer world more and more difficult. And so the first thing is what's called realistic worldview, and that is where you analyze reality and you try to encourage yourself about reality. And actually, Buddha is celebrated. This is so surprising, but very much scientific. Why I love Deepak so much in his pioneering work of trying to bring the outer scientists of the West, that is materialist scientists, what in ancient India they called outer scientists, into connection with the inner scientists of India, who were the greatest, who still always are the greatest. And I so much admire that. And so the when you
the first principle.
Yeah, the first thing is realistic worldview.
Realistic.
It said, Om ye dharma hetu prabhava hetu tesham tathagata hi avadat tesham chayunirodo evam vadi mahasraman swaha. This is a famous verse in Sanskrit, or in Hindi, in the Hindi of the day, Prakrit, which says that all things that arise from causes, what the causes are, and how to terminate the negative ones. This is the teaching of the great secret. This is sort of celebrating the Buddha for discovering causality, which is a completely scientific thing. You know, nothing again to believe.
But causality is not linear. It's an interdependent.
Well, there are different levels, right? There's linear, there's this and that, and then ultimately nothing is ever produced, so it's okay. Ultimately, there's nothing ever produced. But on the relative level, causality is very key to give you leverage over the vast relativity that you're in. A lot of people also have misunderstood Buddhism, its teachings of selflessness and emptiness, and the Dalai Lama has been the one on the whole planet to clarify this, actually, in his own teaching, so wonderfully. And because when you hear emptiness and selflessness, people who are modern and who are thinking that nothingness is waiting for them just when they die, so all their problems will be over and it'll be boring, but there won't be there to be boring, so it's okay, let's keep peace and quiet. There won't be any suffering. So then they tend to think, oh, empty, so that must mean that nothingness I think is reality. Or selflessness, that must mean that I don't exist. So, okay, it's cool, I can do whatever I feel like. You know, worse, of course, I just shoot myself. So this is the materialist thing, not the same. Emptiness only means everything is relative. It is actually the discovery of relativity. Relation, that everything is interrelated with
universal relativity.
What's that?
Universal relativity.
Universal relativity, even you could say absolute relativity, and which is a contradiction in a certain way. But absolute relativity means that there's no escape from interconnection with everybody, and therefore there's only compassion and love to make that interconnection optimal, as best as it can possibly be. Love defined as will to the happiness of the beloved. And so that is the flow state, where you're empty of any sense of separateness, and you merge actually with everything, and you feel everyone is the same body as you, and therefore when they hurt, you don't like it. actually you can bear it at such a vast scale because simultaneously you're aware that it's made of bliss, which sounds impossible. But apparently, when you go past the dualistic thing, it's not impossible. So you're like, there's a wonderful Japanese writer, Zen writer, who said, enlightenment is like a state of double exposure on a negative of an old-fashioned film, where there's one part of the exposure is the relativity, and the other part is the freedom, the blissfulness of that relativity, so the ocean of it. So you see them both simultaneously, which normally we can't do. It's like you see your reflection in a mirror. You only see the reflected objects, or you think about the fact that there's just a reflection in the mirror. You alternate. But in the enlightened consciousness, you're completely aware of the reflectiveness in the mirror at the same time as you focus totally on all the details of what's in the mirror in order to do whatever it is you're doing, looking at. So
that's the first principle, okay?
Yeah.
Correction of perception, misperception.
Yes.
That's the first.
Yes.
Let's go over the other 7 quickly.
Let's go what?
The other 7. Okay? So first is correct perspective, okay?
Right.
Correcting the mistake.
Based on the realistic worldview, you then realize that you have the opportunity as a human being. Because in Buddhist biology, you became a human being because you were ethical as other kinds of animals. Ethical means other regarding and aware of how you impinge on others and not wishing to hurt them and wishing to help them and so on. And humanity is reflected in ethicality according to Buddhist biology. It's not a militaristic thing. The human beings are very vulnerable. But because we're so clever and talk with each other, we can invent things that be worse than them and so forth. But the point is our basic thing is soft. That's why we have soft skin, we have no scales, we don't spit poison, our fingernails break if we try to claw somebody. We're just wimps, basically. The human history is a wimpification history. That's how to avoid being a wimp. And so, but that's our strength, is being wimps, and therefore getting along with each other and being kind and needing kindness. And so maybe it's a complete, Dalai Lama goes like this. The mother totally depends on the mother, and the baby doesn't know. The baby's a stranger when they first come to the family, so they came out of the mother, but nobody knows who dad is. Hello. Einstein or Winston Churchill. All babies look like Winston Churchill. So the next thing is realistic motivation. In other words, life purpose. What is the purpose of life? If you are a being who can become aware of total bliss at all times and be able to help others find that themselves in whatever way, not necessarily teaching them or some religion, just the way you are with them, then there's no other pleasure like that. That's the most fun thing. That being bliss is what's better than that? There can't be anything better than that. And sharing it, of course, is the only thing that does not mean bliss in a small sort of way, but a big way. And so then that's realistic motivation is seeking this higher reality, turning yourself completely into it, not just having a hint, not just hitting a flow state here and there, but understanding how they all come together and how you can find that forever, always, timelessly, and yet able to interact with beings in time, if they need it, if they need that. They say one of the statements of enlightenment, one of the names of Buddha is Triyatva, which means knower of the 3 times. And so that Buddha is in the future, in the present, and so forth. And the Buddha, you never leave because you are all beings. You have to experience, like imagine right now, any one of you sitting there, if you had a weird feeling suddenly, like you were everyone in the room. You were seeing from all the eyes in the room. You were inhabiting all the bodies sitting here and there. You were all there. Suddenly. It would be kind of weird. You wouldn't know. Although it's said to be a special sign when the Dalai Lama teaches the teaching of selfless compassion, people kind of, who were sitting there, they kind of, oh, wait a minute, which one am I? Because they get into a kind of feel the feeling. That's why people like meeting Dalai Lama, because they feel a little release from their sense of isolation and loneliness and imprisonment in their separated self, just in his presence. They do. So what was I talking about?
You addressed
realistic purpose.
two of the
behind realistic purpose comes realistic speech Because speech is really, you realize how amazing speech is. We all talk about silent sages, but speech is incredible. Because when you speak, people who listen to you open their mind to you. So you merge minds, very imperfect because words are not perfect. But still, they open their mind to you. When you listen to someone, they give themselves to you in your mind. So speech is where we have our community, where we become one even without realizing it, by listening and speaking. And therefore, negative speech is considered very, very bad. So realistic speech means only liberating and helpful and loving speech, never angry and evil and harsh and harmful speech or lying or etc. That's the third one. And then there's realistic action, karma, physical action mainly, but also realistic karma means mental action. And then this is where meditation starts. Because when you realize that your mental action is changing you, it's the most powerful thing about you, although the most subtle. But it shapes your body, actually. It made you reach this human body. And when you were, Buddhists have a wonderful Oedipal crisis before conception of beings. Because a being who died is in the bardo and they're flying around, they're going up and down 3rd Avenue, and they see things and then they can see through walls and windows, and then they see couples getting it on, and they really like this one, and they really like that one. And then they merge with them, and if their sexual differentiation is determined by which one they're particularly attracted to, that was another definite thing. Ancient Buddhist, Indian Buddhist psychology, not just Tibetan, Indian. And so, realistic, your mind and controlling your lust, your hatred, your anger, your jealousy, your pride, and your delusion and depression. This becomes key because in a dream, just like in a lucid dream state or in a between state, a bardo state, you want to be able to navigate consciously and not be drawn over here. You don't want to be reborn in a bad neighborhood. You don't want to be reborn with some people who will not be good parents, who are not lovable. You want to be reborn with beautiful people. Naturally. That's what you want to be. So you want to have some kind of sense of aesthetic even in your unconscious mind. So to do that, you have to start meditating. Then there's realistic livelihood, which is just an appendage to realistic karma, not doing anything harmful for your livelihood. Then we go to realistic creativity. I don't just say effort, I say creative effort, just what you said. Realistic creative effort of making beauty, making the world better, making others happier. And then that connects to realistic mindfulness. And realistic mindfulness is the bridge between all this conceptual stuff, which relates to controlling your action, exploring yourself. Mindfulness is still conceptual because you're observing your picture of your own mental mechanisms and how they're functioning and your emotions and things like that. But then mindfulness bridges over into realistic samadhi, which means concentration and deep one-pointed meditation. And so then when that happens, you reach the other end of the Eightfold Path, and the realistic worldview becomes empowered. It's like a shuttle. It goes right back through the weft, the warp, the weft, I don't know what it is, goes back through there, and it touches the realistic worldview, and then you experience, through that concentration, you cancel, you erode. It's gradual, actually. There are moments of satori, but mainly it's gradual. You erode your sense of separateness. Because the one point of this is, no, I'm totally interconnected. You can't really find the boundary between me and another, and then you sort of come through that, and then you feel, you embrace the others. You feel okay about being them. You see them as your mother. You see them as yourself. Actually, without any differentiation. No, there's no aliens to you, and not just humans. Actually, all beings. You do eventually when you become a light like that. So then it's a gas. Being a Buddha, it's a gas. And the Indian people, who had this fantastic freedom because of their greater wealth than anywhere else in Eurasia in ancient time, by far. It was by far the wealthiest place. They would just, the Maharajas would give their weight away, and their weight was often substantial. And they would give it away on jewels and diamonds to the populace every year. They were just like that. They had these elephants, and the Persians never dared to conquer them, and Alexander the Great had to withdraw, couldn't quite make it. Because it was a very powerful country, and therefore they tolerated people who were seeking something higher. Precisely, they sought higher yoga, unity with reality, which is the ultimate meaning of yoga. They sought that because they had the material wealth and the material success and the beauty and all the ragas and all this and that, and they realized that wasn't it. That wouldn't last. There was a different level of beauty and joy and love and so forth. So that's why India became the great inner scientists and created the great knowledge, neuroscience, thousands of years ago. I'm sorry. Chakra system is ancient neuroscience. But you don't need tools, machines. Your own mind, your one-pointed mind is like the electronic probe. It's more powerful than an electronic probe. Your one-pointed mind. It's just as solid as that and powerful. So that's India. That's why I love India. That's why I love India. He brought us here from India. He brought us.
You heard.
And everybody knows it. 85 books.
So everything Bob said right now is the Eightfold Path, or what's called Marga, right? We will just summarize it for all of you what he just said.
Only by kindness of Dalai Lama himself was I able to do that.
So first of all, Bob used the word realistic. He didn't say right as a moral imperative. Realistic means knowing it as it is.
I prefer it to
realistic. Yeah, realistic perspective, realistic motivation, realistic mindfulness, realistic speech, realistic livelihood, realistic samadhi.
Terminal action.
Yeah. So these are the 8 means to navigate existence realistically. Can you share these 3 realms, Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, Dharmakaya?
Yes, that's a beautiful thing. When you become where the whole of reality is your body, just like you might say, oh, this is me, everything, you are everywhere in it. You're totally everywhere. In everyone's mind and body and in the trees and in the atoms and the subatomic energies, you're everywhere. And when you do that, in a way, you're infinite, you're present, you're completely peaceful, nothing happens, but simultaneously, you stay at the boundary of it as an individual melting into it, and that is the bliss. And that's also infinite and endless. And that's called the body of Sambhoga. Wonderful word, Sambhoga.
So Nirvana was the physical dimension.
Well, then from
moving that to...
The bliss body is first Sambhoga, which is being that infinite, and then within that, imagine if you were everywhere in the room, and you could feel the particular sufferings of all many beings in the room, then what's called the Nirmanakaya, or the emanation body, is you would emanate another being, a medicine, a book, 85 books, you would emanate an Indian doctor, yogi, you would emanate whatever it would be to help that person. And you could effortlessly do that because you were all the energy of everything. And this energy is infinite. There's no limit to it. You draw from it and it's just never depleted. It's an inexhaustible, akshaya, dhana, akshaya, inexhaustible treasure. It's an inexhaustible treasure. So those are called the 3 bodies of Buddhahood, but there's other ways of doing it. But that's all analytical. That's just to be able to try to imagine what is unimaginable, but is experienceable. We have the ability to be that, to experience that. But we can't really imagine it in our dualistic concepts. But we can have vectors. The dualistic concepts are really helpful to give us vectors of how to approach the great experience of our lives, of all our lives, which we often do. And now, it's a survival matter. The consciousness has to go quantum leap now. There's no way to carry on like this. Democratic, Republican, no way. We have to go beyond it.
So we're on Facebook Live.
American, Indian, Chinese, Korean, American. That guy with that hairdo is crying out to us. He's shooting missiles, but he's crying out. He wants to come to the village and be with the village people. And be in a pride parade in San Francisco on a motorcycle. We have little rockets sticking out the motorcycle. Hand out in the air, multiple flaming colors. As long as he felt safe from us. He would. It's boring to be dictator of a bunch of brainwashed people. And to feel them, subliminally feel them starving. The dictators always become alcoholics and people because it's too boring. Because human beings are too sensitive to each other, basically, to mistreat each other systematically for too long. I think.
So, before we came in, we were having this same conversation. I made the point that to adjust to the insanity right now, to adjust to it is to declare your own insanity.
That's true, we shouldn't adjust.
It's not a measure of well-being to adjust to the collective insanity right now. There are hundreds of thousands of people watching. What can they do to become sane?
You were echoing a wonderful thing that I admire very much that I heard Václav Havel say when someone asked him how they managed under the repression for so long. And he said, well, we just didn't notice that the communist oppressive government existed. We just, if we were in this room, if it was over here, okay, if we're out there sitting in front of a tree, okay, whatever. It just didn't exist, some things rattling around. But we kept our focus on what was really, what life is and what love is.
So we have accepted psychosis as the norm right now. Collective psychosis has become the norm.
Well, sort of. I think of it as an aberration. I'm with Louis C.K. We deserved a mom as a president. And we should have had one. And just everyone couldn't quite get themselves together. And egos got in the way. And we didn't get a mom. And so we got this thing that will push us in that direction rather rapidly, I think. Because we got the mad father. The insane one. I'm very nervous actually. I have to keep my hair brushed back. So we do need a mom. We need, therefore it's right to be reborn as a mom. We have Angela Merkel, thank God. We have Macron, whose wife is 25 years older and therefore helps lensing her wisdom. So it's next best thing. The French getting along, that'll be another story. But, there are a few around, and we'll get more of them. And this is only, as I said, they're less inclined immediately to blow their top and go to war. And we can't have that anymore. That is absolutely out. And, but don't worry, they're angels. There are all kinds of beings. This one is a human, but also an angel. What we think of as angels. They're not exactly angels, something more multiform. Anyway, I think I talked enough. I did not.
No, you said what was important.
Well, I don't have my watch.
We can conclude this evening, but I think we should do a little exercise. May I do one right now?
Okay. What? Exercise?
Yeah, meditation.
Yes.
So
Could we do a meditation where we think about His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and we think about joining him in insisting on peace and being peace, therefore. Where he always says his slogan, world like you, is world peace through inner peace. So somehow imagine that even the Tibetans currently under lockdown in Tibet, the entire country like a prison camp, basically, can't have a picture of their beloved Lama or whatever, but I won't elaborate. Or all the other dreadful things in Syria and everywhere. But somehow we see through this suffering and we see the basic bliss that is the stuff of people's lives, even the animals' lives, everyone. It's what holds cells and the molecules and what I learned from Greek neuropeptides. Holds them together is bliss. And so we reflect on that without being aloof and without numbing ourselves to the fact that these people in these terrible situations of starvation and violence and burning and whatever feel they are suffering and that there's nothing to do but try to help in whatever way. And the first help, just mentally, is to see through it, so that we will not burn out, we will not lose hope, we will not be despaired. We will manifest joy even in the midst of it all, but not callous, ignoring or neglecting of the suffering that others are experiencing through their ignorance.
Be peace, feel peace, create peace, speak peace. Thank you, Rob.
I love Deepak Chopra. If you get serious about the problems of the world, you make yourself smile. If you ignore them.
That's it. So, I think we'll open it up to a few questions. If you have questions for Bob or for me, yes.
Thank you so much. My name is Rick Ulfick. I'm founder of We the World and the We campaign at we.net. Thank you so much for bringing this kind of consciousness to us. And part of what we've been doing is something called 11 Days of Global Unity, which you both have participated in. And the subject of unity is what I wanted to ask you about, given that the state of our society now, in terms of political and social consciousness, is not really, it's kind of a state of disunity that seems to be now at the moment. And how would you bring the awareness that you're talking about for Man of Peace and what you're both saying, how would you bring that to the masses of people in our society so that they can have more peace with themselves and with the world? How would you do that?
Let's try this. Be aware right now. Be aware. That's peace. You don't have to do anything, you just have to be.
I guess we have to be part of the immune system. Part of the immune system and not part of the infection.
See, in this moment, everything is interdependently co-arising. What we call I, which is the most frequent word we use, is not in here. This is an experience in I, and there's only one I, only one awareness. The experience of the separate self is based on the misperception that this is who I am, whereas this is also an experience in awareness, and awareness is one. This moment, it's one. It's not that you have to find peace, you have to uncover everything that is obscuring peace.
Hi, and along those lines, Deepak and Bob, I'm behind you, but I apologize. I'm behind you. Hi. Thank you all and both for your teachings, and along what you were just saying, Deepak, regarding being peace is seeing yourself as connected to everything. One of the things in the Western world that I think is very obstructing of that, the stories that we tell ourselves, is the fact that there's a lot of self-hatred, self-loathing, and a lot of lack of self-love in our world. And I know that the Dalai Lama has said, for example, that when he was introduced to that concept, he was incredulous that it even existed. And so one of the things that I was wondering is, how do we, in the Western world in particular, get into the idea that that's not the story that we have to continue to tell ourselves if people aren't willing to jump to the idea of us having this ever-connected, nibbanic reality, which is the ultimate reality. But it seems like it's a leap when people can't quite concept the fact that the stories that they tell themselves about their traumas, about their addictions, about their regrettable actions or behavior, and all of the psychology around that is sort of always kind of what gets in the way. And so that ego conditioning tends to be what we think of as ourself, and that we identify with that, unfortunately, as opposed to being able to see clearly into this bliss state, which is, once we get to it and believe in it and, kind of do it, then it extends and it expands and it becomes who we are and what we are, and then our mere presence, as you said, becomes that which is perpetuating more of that.
Sounds really good. Sounds really good.
Yeah, but we keep using the word we. We should be asking, who do I mean when I use the word we? Because if you mean you as a person, then that self-love is also an illusion. The person is a process in the one awareness. Am I making sense? When you say, how do we? You mean we as individuals. That is the basic mistake of the intellect to begin with. Awareness is the only we there is. And awareness is a singularity, can't be divided. So how do we get there? Well, just being. And then feeling, and then speaking, and then acting, based on a deeper understanding of what is being. Being is not separate self to begin with.
I would just like to add one thing, which is that this addictive culture that we live in is very disempowering to us all because of the unrealistic worldview that we are essentially nothing. We're only the bodies here in this life, we're biological robots, and that whatever we do this life, good or bad, it will come to nothing. And that is very, very disempowering and depressing. And it relates to why depression is such a huge disease in this country. Because what's the point? Might as well be addicted to something. What's the point? Because it won't be nothing. There's no, and some people go back to kind of religious, fundamentalist, conviction type addiction. You can have conviction addiction too, if you become extremist. But in a way, they are luckier almost because at least Jesus will save them or somebody will. And they feel therefore kind of purpose in that. And that's actually better than the idea of being nothing. Being nothing is completely disempowering and very much just makes us all into like Charlie Chaplin said it beautifully, right, in that movie, Modern Times. He was just a cog in a machine. He was just, like a cog in a wheel. And so, the very important thing is that if we don't move in a positive direction, we will deteriorate in a negative way, as addiction shows people when they do. And at whatever point can get worse, and the future trajectory is infinite. So this moment is if it turns the tiniest bit to the better, that has an infinite consequence. So it's a very, very powerful thing. I kind of complained a little bit to Eckhart, Meister Eckhart, the reincarnation of Mr. Tola, about the moment. Because of course it's important that we are always in the moment. So to be aware of that is very, very important. But if the moment is enwrapped in the unrealistic worldview that the essence of the moment as well as of the future after death is nothing, then the moment is a kind of moment of disconnect. So it's like a palliative rather than a healing thing. Whereas the real moment contains the seeds of a loving future also. So it's all right to keep to have it within the framework of endless love, rather than the framework of drop out because it's all doesn't matter, which is our American addiction. Is we don't really care, or we don't really bother to go, it doesn't matter. We're not really going to say, oh, I'm not going to be rude and say something to some idiot who is going on and on about how somebody's going to fix his health care. They're going to be really brutal. I'm not going to say it because it's hopeless. So, in other words, it doesn't matter if it weakens us enormously when it comes to dealing with our own emotional addiction, like dealing with your own rage, dealing with your own greed, and then, well, it doesn't matter. It's like a circuit breaker. That unrealistic world in our mind. So, strength comes from commitment to the infinite lifestyle.
So this is important, that the nothing this is important, that the nothingness not lead to nihilism.
That's right.
Which it can,
Right.
if it is misinterpreted.
Right.
But when nothingness is everythingness, then
That's
it
okay.
leads to compassion and infinite love and all the right things.
That shows
That's
the
the
benefit of modern
evolution.
scientists.
Yeah.
They think they discovered nothing and assure us that that's what awaits us.
Yes.
So that's our getting out of this mess. You know, and awaits themselves, even they convince themselves of that. So that means that I consider it the worst blind faith.
Misinterpretation of.
What's that?
It's the misinterpretation of shunyata.
Of course. You know, emptiness is completely different.
Yeah.
Total relativity. There's no end. The soul goes on. Now, you were surprised to hear that from a Buddhist, but that's a fact. The soul is just a subtle mind, that's all it is. But it's not a fixed state. You don't take your credit card.
It's an evolving consciousness.
Security card. You don't get that. You do your passport. You can change.
Hi.
The soul does. Yes.
It's so
Yes.
exciting to be able to ask questions to masters like this and to get it all in. So I'm going to try, and I'll try to be concise. The point about the split of who I am and then really that we really are the Maya right behind of this is who I really am and this idea of being separate, right? So we've, whatever, created a leader, whatever the metaphor is, who's very determined to stay with that. I work with children and I use role theory and theater drama therapy, and in working with children, when they get stuck in, I am the role of the bully, I am the role of this or that, and many of them are scarily emulating Donald Trump, the bully. When they get to see their essence and they have fun and they play and they see there are these other roles, we can make some breakthroughs. When you have a leader who is stuck in his role and is not interested at all in seeing the true self, he's not interested. He doesn't. Maybe I'm judging, but I'm guessing. You know, what do you do? Because if the healing and everything you're teaching us is see your true essence, know that it is, but if the leader of your whole country is not interested in that, how do you reach someone like that? And then the bit about how do you sort of share with others and young people, that's another question. But how do you reach someone who's so split and determined to stay within the role that they are, and they're not interested in going beyond it?
I would just say, to Deepak, better than me, I just want to say, it isn't what you do. You know better than I do what to do with children because you work with them. But it's how you are. It's what you be that automatically, without words, without a theory, without telling them this or that or whatever it is, but the way you are, where you're really fully accepting of them. They sense in you a kind of acceptance of them as they are, and so that your need to correct this or that they might manifest, because you have to do that as a teacher, then that is perceived as coming out of acceptance rather than being a total negation. So if you have that empathetic vision, you will naturally do whatever is the best thing with whichever child.
How do you do that with Donald Trump?
I would trust
The leader is just a localized expression of collective consciousness. So you don't change the leader, you change yourself to critical mass. And that's the only way, and it's a long-term process. It takes a long time for the fruit to ripen. And most thoughts that we have today are recycled conditioning for thousands of years. You don't have an original thought. Not just one, none of us. Every thought is a recycled, conditioned, fragmented mind, other than the Buddha's
Karma?
Yeah.
It's our karma? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. If by karma we mean the fragmented, conditioned mind, yes. Well, thank you very much. This could have gone on for a long time. Thank you. Please pick up what? Peace is the way. Thank you.